Today, round 2 of the Mitropa Cup took place in Austria. If you remember, the Mitropa Cup is 10 teams, 10 countries playing an all-play-all tournament, and there's an open section and a women's section. Yesterday I featured the German team and, well, I tipped them as one of the big favourites. And of course that put the commentator's curse on them, and today they only drew 2-2 against Slovakia. So today I'm going to feature one of the other favourites, and that's Austria. And today they played against Italy, and this is the first board game. Marcus Raga representing Austria against Alberto David from Italy. Raga with the white pieces, and it's a very orthodox Slav variation. Sometimes my heart sinks a little when I see this super solid line, but, well, this was a very colourful and very bright game. So black doesn't have to take on c4 here, but you can play e6 as well, for example, but this is one of the main lines. So black wants to support that pawn with b5. So white stops that with a4. And now, normally, black brings out that bishop to f5, but knight a6 was played in this position by David, and of course that knight is looking at a slightly weakened square on b4. Now, it's not the most common variation, but it has been seen quite a few times before, and notably this system was pioneered by Vasily Smyslov, former world champion, of course. Yeah, it's a solid line, and from a positional point of view I quite like it that the knight heads into b4, but of course it does allow white to claim the centre. But black hits out. Bishop g4 is a nice move. So just reminding white that this is a little bit vulnerable. White captured on c4, and now bishop f3. Excuse me, just 1 second. So the problem is white really can't take on f3 because d4 is vulnerable. So it has to play g takes f3. All this has been seen before, I should say. So white's structure has been damaged, but in return he has a strong centre and he does have the 2 bishops. So, okay, both sides have their advantages and disadvantages in this position. Should also say that black's structure is super solid. You know, you could say black's position is quite modest behind the first 3 ranks, but all his pieces are pretty good. You know, he's got rid of this problem bishop that would have been locked behind that pawn and managed to exchange it off. And with a knight on b4, you know, black can try to get counterplay against that pawn, notably. So let's see how the game developed. Raga played king h1 here. Well, no prizes for guessing what he's up to. Of course, he wants to shift the rook to the g file. Now, this is not an original attack. In fact, in this exact position, this has been played before. That doesn't mean to say that it's not dangerous. I rather like this continuation for white. And now you could play g6 here to guard against bishop h6. But black played king h8. Black played this very, very quickly. As I said, it's all been seen before. And here, bishop e3 has been played before, and that's the main move. And of course, it's not bad. But here, Marcus thought for a little bit and came up with f4. And, well, it looks like a very natural move to me. It's more aggressive than bishop e3, as we'll see why in a second. And this is combined with a very nice idea. Let's see. Knight b4 played. And now instead of developing this bishop, white pushed on straight away with e5. Pushing the knight from f6. Of course, the knight is an excellent defender, but white is giving up that d5 square. And the knight comes into e4. So it's a really aggressive idea. And now black thought for a very long time here and played f5. As we'll see, maybe not the best move, but I mean, in some ways this is logical. White wants to attack on the king side. So what black is doing is, well, clearing actually the second rank. So it means that he'll be able to defend laterally on g7. Also, it means that this bishop is looking at the d4 pawn. But in advancing with f5, of course, there are now only 2 pawns in front of the king, and that's risky. You know, the light squares are also weaker once f5 is played. And now here we see the reason why white delayed the development of the bishop. The rook swings up, so the third rank is now clear. No bishop on e3, no pawn on f3 either, and that rook joins the attack. Now I really like this. It's a classic rook lift. So now both rooks are attacking on the open G and H files, and well, I think in practice this is almost impossible to defend, practically impossible. Okay, let's see how the game went. Rook d8. So black is still trying to sort of gain some pressure on the d4 pawn, but really it's pretty irrelevant now. So the queen's swinging over, looking at g7. So black defends that. If bishop takes d4, knight g5, not a difficult move, and hitting too many things. So instead, queen f7 was played. And now here's a nice little finesse before going in for the kill. Bishop d2, which practically forces a5. But it just means that in some variations, if you need to knock out these knights, then, you know, tactically it can be quite useful to have that. And now white goes in for the kill, f5. That really has to be taken, and now it means that the queen is looking at h7. Of course, g6 is impossible because of the pin. That can just be taken. Queen g8 defends the pawn, and now queen g6. Well, you could play knight g5 here, but that gets exchanged off, and still unpleasant for black, but perhaps black can defend that. Instead, queen g6 was played. This is an excellent move and is the prelude to the final move. Let's see. So basically that queen can't be driven away. And after bishop e7, here's the killer move. Very beautiful move. After rook g5, black resigned. This is so brutal but so strong. I think you can see that after, well, let's say bishop takes, then knight takes. So h7 is caving in, and if this, then that forces a checkmate. Or let me see, if h6, could play rook h5, or you could just drop back and then take on h6. It's absolutely crushing, and the G and H files open for these splendid rooks. When you see a game like this, it almost looks like a forced win. But if we go back to this position, now here is where black played f5, which I don't think it's a losing move, but perhaps it gives white what he wants with this rook a3. If black is very careful here, I think he can avoid this rook lift. So first of all, knight b6. So the bishop goes back. Now a5, that's to stop white playing a5. And if rook a3, now this doesn't quite work because queen d5, well, f3 obviously closes the third rank. And if bishop f3, the queen goes back. So you can see the third rank is blocked. Now it's the same position, but now the queen is on d7. So black has time to attack the d-pawn. And then bishop e3 defends the d-pawn, but blocks the rook. And in this position, I think black, well, having cut the rook out of the attack, I have a feeling that black should be okay there. But it's really tricky, very precise moves, and you know, white still has an attack in this position. So, well, credit to Marcus Rager for finding this very clever idea of keeping the third rank free for this wonderful rook lift. So with that victory, with this in one game, actually Austria managed to defeat Italy by 2.5, 1.5, quite close. And they are now the only team with 2 victories out of 2. I should also say that in the women's section, Hungary took an early lead. They're also the sole team with 2 wins out of 2.